Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the top retirement planning mistakes. My name is Alec. I'm joined by my colleague Maddie Bennett.
Hello.
And we're going to get started with one of the worst mistakes you can make, and that is underestimating retirement expenses. It is a huge mistake that we see more often than we would hope to see, but it's a big thing you have to keep in mind. And there's a couple different ways you can underestimate your retirement expenses. And the first is lifestyle creep. A lot of times you'll hear this rule of thumb that when you retire, you should spend about 75% of what you're making now. Well, the problem with that is something called lifestyle creep, is when you make more money, you tend to spend more money. And when you go into retirement, it can be difficult to start spending less money. You want to try and spend the same amount that you're spending while you're still working. So that's one of the things that a lot of people underestimate, is they say, we're going to spend less in retirement, when a lot of the time that's not the case. Another thing that a lot of people underestimate is the impact of inflation. And in recent years, we've really seen this become a big concern for a lot of clients, is inflation. And you can sort of mitigate that risk by just, when you're creating your financial plan, is factor in inflation. Factor in a healthy inflation rate so that $10,000 today is obviously not $10,000 in 10 years. Right. But by factoring in 2-3% inflation, you can sort of give yourself some reassurance that, yes, I can spend more on groceries next year because I have that baked into my plan. You don't want to underestimate the impacts of inflation. Another big thing a lot of people underestimate is healthcare. And I hear all the time of, yeah, I'm pretty healthy. I don't need to spend too much on healthcare. I'll pay for Medicare and I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Well, what happens when you get older? A lot of times you will have more healthcare costs when you get older. And especially as you get really old, and there's a potential for long-term care. And that can be really expensive. And that's definitely something that you don't want to underestimate for.
Right.
And then lastly, another big thing that people underestimate for is unexpected costs. They say, okay, I'm pretty good with my expenses. I spend this amount per month. We do this vacation each year. We do this each year. That's great. What happens when you need a new roof, or the water heater breaks, and then the car breaks down all in a month? Do you have that reserve that you can draw upon for those expenses? You don't want to underestimate those costs either.
Yep. All very good points. So another common mistake that a lot of people do is just waiting until they're 40 years old to even start thinking about retirement. It's never too early to start, but there can be a point where it's too late and you're just trying to catch up with your savings, which can drastically affect your lifestyle for those years that you're trying to save extra. So we've got a couple different scenarios where, one, Alec starts saving at, say, 40, and then I start at 25. Alec is having to save more each year. He's saving $50,000 per year. I started at $25,000 per year. So by the time that we both retire at 65, the amount that I've saved versus Alec is $1 million versus Alec's $1.25 million.
And a lot of people will think, oh, Alec saved more.
Right.
He's going to have more.
Exactly. But no, that's not necessarily the case. So using a 6% on average return over that period, Alec comes out his portfolio to be a little less than $3 million, and mine comes out to a little bit over $4 million. Couple factors there as to why mine is a little bit more, with compounding really being the first one. It's just more time for it to grow and continue to earn, and you're placing more in. It's also you're taking advantage of different timings of the market. You're getting in at different ebbs and flows of the market. So you're getting that kind of benefit as well. So the point here is just the earlier you start, the better off you'll be.
Yeah, and going off of that, another big mistake people make with their retirement planning is an improper investment strategy.
Yeah.
You can't just put money into the market and just assume it's going to grow.
Yeah.
You need a proper investment strategy. And there's a couple different things that people mistakenly do when they're investing. And first is they overconcentrate in one position.
Yeah.
A lot of times we see this with people that have a lot of company stock, is they work for a good company and the stock might be doing really well, and they keep investing in the stock each year, and that probably does well for them for a long time, as long as the stock continues to do well. The problem with that is, as you keep putting more and more money in, by the time you retire, maybe that stock position is now 50% of your portfolio. Well, now you have half of your money invested in one company, and if that company starts not doing well, that can drastically affect how your retirement goes.
Right.
Another thing leading off of that is not just one company stock, but if you have an improper asset allocation, that can also really affect. And that's not just company stock. We're talking if you have too much in large cap stocks or too much in international stocks or too much in bonds, a variety of the different things that can lead to underperformance. There was a study quite a few years ago that showed that upwards of 90% of return variation between funds was actually due to asset allocation. So asset allocation is really important that you hone in on not having too much in one asset or too little in another asset.
Right, exactly.
And then lastly, another mistake people make with their investment strategy is they don't understand what their risk tolerance is versus what their risk capacity is.
Right.
Risk tolerance is how much risk are you personally willing to take? How much are you able to put into the market and okay with the ups and the downs of the market? Risk capacity is how much risk do you need to take to achieve your goals. So if you need to make $50,000 per year on your portfolio, how much do you need to put into stocks? How much can you leave in bonds and cash? And it's really important that you understand the difference between the two.
Right. And that kind of ties into our last point about the later you start. So the later you start, you might not be as comfortable with the more risky return or more risky portfolio, but you may need to do that to make up for the lost time.
Yep.
So another mistake you can make is over-reliance or over-dependence on your Social Security income, assuming that that's going to really make up the large covering your expenses in retirement. It likely is not going to cover everything, and if it does, it may cause you to have a drastic lifestyle change from when you were working, having a solid income versus maybe going to half of what you were making while you were working. So that's something to think about as well. A lot of people want to take Social Security as soon as they stop working because they think it's going to supplement that loss of income, but that's not always the best strategy.
Yeah, it's usually a pretty big mistake to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, you never know when the right time is. If you know when you're going to die, and Drew always says this, then we'll tell you the day to start taking Social Security. But unfortunately, we don't know that. So if you can wait, and that's another beauty of having a solid portfolio, is you have the ability to draw from your portfolio to supplement that income until it is a good time to start taking Social Security. And then once you do start taking it, having that portfolio as well, you can decrease the amount you're withdrawing from it and provide you a solid income over time.
Yeah, and when people create a Social Security strategy, a lot of times they're making two mistakes in one. They are, one, taking it early, and that's usually not a good idea. And then two, they're also underestimating their longevity.
Yeah.
And there is a risk that you live longer than expected. So for example, if you say, I'm going to live until I'm 85 years old. Well, if you plan for that and you live to 90, 95, 100 even, where is that money going to come from if you only plan to 85 and now you're out of money and you're living longer? So that's a big risk that you really want to make sure that you don't underestimate longevity. It's better to plan that you're going to live longer than to plan that you're going to die earlier.
Right, exactly.
And married couples, actually, if you are relatively healthy, not a smoker, and you're a married couple, there's a 50% chance one of the two of you actually lives until age 93.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we go through these discussions with clients, we say, okay, we have John going to live to 92 and Jane to live to 94. And we get people say, no, we're not. I'm not living that long. I
don't want to live that long.
I don't want to live that long. And while that might be the case, we still have to plan for that because what if you do?
Yeah, exactly. It's better to be conservative, assume you're going to live longer, than assume the other way.
Yeah.
So you should have multiple baskets in retirement in terms of where your money is. A good combination of pre-tax or traditional retirement bucket, as well as Roth and after-tax. The difference between Roth and after-tax is Roth is money that's in a retirement account that you've already been taxed when you contribute it. After-tax is things like brokerage accounts, trust accounts, things like that. Having a good mixture of all three really sets you up to be the most successful in retirement. Many people have a higher concentration overconcentration in the pre-tax just because they see that immediate tax benefit or satisfaction when they make that contribution that year. Or their company might not even offer a Roth 401k or a Roth company plan. But having a mixture of all three will allow you to better control your taxable income in retirement, because at a certain point, you will start having to draw from that account for what's called required minimum distributions. So having a good mixture of Roth and pre-tax just allows you better control. So talk with your advisor about what combination is best for you, as well as what we call Roth conversions, which is converting some of the pre-tax to your Roth, whether while you're working or in those years after you retire before you start collecting Social Security or have to start drawing money from it.
Yeah, and that's step one of not minimizing taxes is a big mistake, is make sure you have that combination, but also make sure when you need money, you don't just log on to Schwab or Fidelity and just say, oh, that account has money in it, I'm going to pull from it.
Right.
You want to make sure that you are strategically pulling money out of these three different buckets to minimize your taxes as much as you can.
Exactly.
So another big mistake that we see is a lot of people will set a retirement plan and then just forget about it. And that is a big mistake because things change. Not just in markets. When I say things change, yes, investments will change, markets will be up, markets will be down. But what happens when you get a big promotion at work? Should you just save the same amount you were before? Probably not. What happens when your spouse unfortunately passes away? Are you still going to be spending as much money as you were before? Probably not. The important thing here is just to be flexible. Continue to update your plan. A retirement plan always needs to be updated. And think about all of the other factors that come into play. And a big one is if we have a period of market underperformance. I'm not talking about just a typical bear market that happens every once in a while. That is sort of baked into a lot of these financial plans. We're talking about an unforeseen long-term down market. You might have to be flexible and adjust what you're spending if we're seeing one of those circumstances come up.
Right, exactly. Especially if it's around the time when retirement is in 5-10 years. You may need to work an extra year or save a little bit more for the plan to still work. So it's another common mistake is trusting a retirement software without even realizing kind of what calculations that they're using or what inputs are going into it. The software is only going to be as good as the inputs that you put into it. So it's very important to precisely consider what you're putting into it. So this includes what you are going to be spending or what you are spending now, how your portfolio is invested. So that's why it's important to work with a trusted advisor who can help walk you through to ensure that the inputs are up to date and accurate, and not just trust one that you may find online and you're not exactly sure what inputs that they're putting into it. Small changes definitely have a huge impact. I know, like I mentioned before, maybe working an extra year could really make the plan look a lot better, or saving an extra $5,000 for the last 10 years of your working career could really help make the plan that much better. The probability of success should be looked at as the chance that you need to make a change, not necessarily that the plan isn't going to work, but it's just, do we need to make adjustments to make it work? So, yeah.
And then as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, wow, these are a lot of big mistakes people could be making. And you might be thinking, what should I be doing instead? And we actually did a webinar 2 months ago called the top 10 things to do to be able to retire in 2025. So if you're sitting here thinking, hey, what should I be doing? I'm not going to make these mistakes, but I need to be doing something. Go ahead and watch that video and you'll get a better idea of what you should be doing. But if you have any questions about anything that we went over today, and you are already a client, you can, of course, reach out to Maddie or myself. We'll be happy to answer any questions. But you can also reach out to your primary advisor. If you're watching us for the very first time, welcome. If you're interested in learning more about who we are and what we do, there's a QR code on your screen that you can scan and schedule an introductory call at no cost to you. I hope everyone found something valuable from this webinar. If you want to learn more, you can always go to our website. We have a bunch of different articles and webinars you can watch. Tune in next month for our next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.